Hello and welcome to the How2Exit podcast, where we introduce you to a world of small to medium business acquisitions and mergers. We interview business owners, industry leaders, authors, mentors, and other influencers with the sole intent to share with you what it looks like to buy or sell a business. Let's get rolling. And now a moment for our sponsors. I want to highly recommend you get Acquisition Aficionado magazine. Every month, Acquisition Aficionado magazine brings you tactics for business buying and selling you won't find anywhere else. Learn firsthand from industry leaders who share their success stories, featuring in-depth interviews and stories from leading figures in the business acquisition industry. This multi-platform mobile magazine speaks to acquisition entrepreneurs wherever they are in the journey. And I want you to visit acquisitionaficionado.com today. Hello and welcome to the How2Exit podcast. Today I'm here with Wes Kauffman. He's a serial acquisition entrepreneur, owner of multiple businesses, and he's bought some franchises recently. So we're going to chat about that. Let's just jump right in. Thank you for being here today, first of all.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, and let's just kind of jump in where we jump in with everybody. I was looking at you in the show notes and stuff. It looks like you've been doing this for nearly 20 years, right? You bought your first company a while back. Let's just start there. Your origin story. How did you become an entrepreneur? What was your first purchase like and that type of stuff?
Sure, absolutely. So I bought my first company in 2003. I got out of college, moved around a little bit. Before I got married, about a month before I got married, I moved out here to Lancaster PA, which is where my wife is from. An interim job, I was actually working construction for an Amish house framing crew, I learned how to work. I will say that. I have never met people that are so excited to get up in the morning and just go work incredibly hard. So it was kind of good for me. I think it was a bit of a growing up period for me. I would have been 22 at the time. So I did that for 2 or 3 years after we got married. About 3 years in I'm a driven person, and there was nowhere to go there, right? I was just a worker, and I think I would have loved construction. I think I could have owned a construction company. I enjoy it. But at the time, I was talking to a gentleman that my father-in-law went to church with, and he owned a small business, actually a micro business, that did camera repair. I was talking to him. I knew he's pretty smart, really intelligent investor in the stock market, and just said, hey, I want to do something else. I was looking at buying a lawn care company that was for sale in our neighborhood. And he's like, why don't you come check out what I'm doing? I'm looking to get out of this and go do something else. So I went and worked for him for a day or two. I'm kind of a nerd at heart. Lord of the Rings is my favorite everything. I'm technical. I like to work on stuff. So I went and did that, agreed to an apprenticeship, worked for him for 6 months, and then took over that business. What was great is it was a micro business. I mean, when I took over, it was 75 grand a year in revenue. It was tiny. Yeah. It was just a lifestyle business. But because the cost of goods was so low and the rent was so cheap, it was a good wage. Bought that, did that for about 8 years, and just me in a small room, and got kind of tired of it. But it taught me everything about accounting and running my books and all that. After that, we moved to a new location, started to grow. I purchased another photo business in our region. We started doing rentals, we started doing printing. I bought another camera store that was going out of business, took that over, and then I bought out a photo printing company that we were sharing a space with. So over those, I think 11 years, grew it to about 1.2 million in revenue, and it's still operating. We're about 1 million right now. It's kind of sits around 1 million other than 2020. And I think we've got 8 staff there. Runs itself. I have 2 managers that are doing a great job. Hopefully at some point we'll be able to transition and sell it to them. I'd like to kind of move that over to them, but they're not quite ready for it. We actually just, as we were discussing EOS, we just started implementing EOS over there. So I think that's going to be helpful.
That's cool
for them. 2017, so in the photo industry, we do a lot of printing. So Fastsigns, the franchise, was reaching out to photographic people, entrepreneurs, trying to get them to buy franchises because there's a lot of crossover. They do co-brand. And so I had looked at launching a brand new franchise, probably 45 minutes north of us in Hershey, PA. Decided against it in 2017. The drive from my house, the commute would have been too much. And so just kind of let it die. And then early 2018, the local Fastsigns franchise, I was on Biz Buy Sell, which is like what I do for fun, is go on Biz Buy Sell, as I'm sure many people on this podcast do. and I saw a sign company in Lancaster, PA for sale. And you can, they always try and make them generic so you can't tell which brand it is, but you can figure it out pretty easily if you do a little digging. So I reached out, looked into it, almost put an offer in. Somebody else got it under contract, so we kind of walked away. But then that was in January, February. That summer, was just went on vacation in Maine with my wife, and I'm like, we need to reach back out to that guy. I think we need to do it. We reached back out. The deal had fallen through with the other buyer, and by the end of that year, by December, we were owners of Fastsigns. It was doing about 2.1, 2.2 in revenue. So it was a decent size acquisition, probably about 300K EBITDA on it, or SDE, I should say, not EBITDA. And ran it for 2019. Was a huge, a lot of growing pains. The sign industry is, we're essentially a custom manufacturer. Every job's different. Processes and systems are really hard to dial in. While it was doing well on revenue, the systems weren't really there for that particular franchise. And I think a lot of sign franchises struggle with systems because of the custom manufacturing part of it. But we did all right. Had a good 2019, learned a lot. 2020 hit, started out really well, and then COVID. So there was a lot of soul searching between March and May, June of that year. And in May of that year, I reached out to a gentleman on the West Coast who owns Fast Signs in Seattle. And at the time, he was doing work for Amazon. And I said, hey, do you want an East Coast provider? East Coast help? And he says, no. Why would I do that? But we hit it off. I'd known Dan from the photo industry. He had owned photo stores as well. So we had shared trauma, is the way I like to put it, because of the photo industry is tough. It's really tough. And so we had that, and we kept talking, and we ended up buying another wide format print company that I had been looking at here in the Lancaster, PA area. They were doing about 1.5 million in annual sales, but had a really awesome facility, had the equipment we needed to scale, had a really great staff. So it was kind of, we didn't just buy it for in and of itself, even though they were doing well financially. And then we made the pitch to Amazon, and they made us their East Coast provider. They only have a few like official signage providers for their new warehouses.
Mm-hmm.
And so they brought us on board. And so obviously that was huge for us. We went from a combined 3.5 in revenue to a little over 8 the following year. And then so that was 2021, the first year. And then this year we've brought in, there's a Fastsigns York, which is about 40 minutes away. That gentleman, John, awesome guy, and I've wanted to partner with him for a while. So we not merged the territories, but merged the operations. And we've now moved all of our production operations into a 37,000 square foot production facility here in Lancaster, doing the production for York and Lancaster. And they still have a sales office in York, obviously. So probably about 30% growth this year, 35, I think we'll do. Last year's combined revenue would have been about 10 million, and this year I think we'll do a little over 13, with a goal of growing that next year significantly. Lots of change. I have an amazing group of people here. We're at 53 employees. They're probably a little change weary. All the mergers, all the growth, it gets tiring, but at the same time, they're doing a great job, and we're continually improving and getting better every day.
Cool. And I think if you're just getting into EOS, and some of these other business operating systems out there are they're critical. I think crucial. I think I should say, especially in high changing environments, because then you have a uniformity. And if you
Yeah.
use something like EOS, where they just kind of see that and they can go Google it and do their own research, and there's free resources for them to do it, it doesn't
Mhm.
seem like you're doing something odd, right? The new
Right.
guy doesn't
Yeah.
know what he's
Some
doing.
crazy system. Yeah. It's been good for us as a leadership team. I'm very much the visionary, and I've been kind of able to own that a little bit. I think before I just thought I had ADD, which I probably do. It's not diagnosed, but I
join
probably
the
do.
join the club.
Yeah. They bought me a little, I don't know where it is. It's a little squirrel that when you squeeze it, it shoots a nut out of its mouth. Yeah. I'm a squirrel sometimes. So, but John, my partner, is an integrator to his core. And so we're actually in that transition where he's going to be the integrator. I'm going to focus more on the visionary stuff. And I think it'll be really freeing for both of us, and it'll be better for the organization. He's learning to, it's been really cool to see, because I'll come up with some crazy idea and he's like, no, or not now, right? Just give me a second. Let me fix what we got to do right now. I mean, that's been awesome. Honestly, we have a great relationship, and it's cool to have that.
You would think, I mean, the reason a lot of people buy franchises It's because they've already got the exact step-by-step everything. Like McDonald's is notorious for being told that cook this for 3 minutes and 29 seconds, right? They flip the burger at 30 seconds or whatever. Not at 31, not 32, right? You put 2 dashes of salt. I grew up, I think it was one of my first jobs. So I flipped burgers for about a few weeks, and then I realized that dad paid me more money because I wasn't going to work. I was mad at dad. I wasn't going to work for dad that summer.
Yeah.
So I went into town. I had my own vehicle. So I went into town and flipped burger for a couple weeks. And I called dad and said, "Hey, I'm sorry. This sucks. I want to go back to work painting houses."
Please take me back. The sign industry is a little unique. Like I was telling you earlier, it's custom manufacturing. Every single job's unique. Every single job needs a custom design. It's not like printing business cards or printing mailers where you're going to do one design and print 1,000. You might do one design and print one, and that's it, right? So,
Right.
with our larger clients, some of the nationals, Amazon, Walmart, et cetera, we do much higher volume, but still a lot of it's custom. And so I think like Fastsigns is an awesome franchise, and they definitely give you systems, but I think in some ways it's almost impossible for them to regiment it like a McDonald's or a Subway would, because they're literally, I can build you the same sign 5 different ways, depending on, is it an inside sign? Is it an outside sign? Do you want multiple dimensions? Is it flat? Does it need to be lit, reflective? Like there's a lot of questions that go into, people say I want a sign, and like, okay, I'm going to ask you 30 questions and then we'll figure out what you actually want, right?
Right.
So I think that's, I mean, they do give us the tools and they give us the training, but it's really kind of up to you as the individual franchisee to really dig in and figure out exactly how you're going to do it. And so there's pros and cons to that, right?
I used in my real estate investment career, I used Fast Signs quite a bit just because we'd have them print the foam board signs, right? They were never the cheapest. It's just like when I ran out, I would have them do it. And I could beat their prices hands down online because I think it's the model that's set up. You guys are set up to do fast and to do one-offs, to where a lot of these things online, if you're not ordering 100 plus, they won't deal with you.
They don't want to touch it. Yeah. And they often have much more limited, like I know some of the big, there's a lot of wholesalers or big online places, and they have very much refined, like, this is the type of foam core we carry. And whereas I can come in and say, I can make it a million different ways, we're doing, we do a much more like custom design build is really more what we do. Like we're doing they're building a new library here in Lancaster, and they have this, it's like a honeycomb wall that we're using these take form. It's like a wooden, how do I explain it? Like a wooden shape that's been pre-made. So we're doing that with custom pieces of acrylic that are lit and all this, like, so it's a much more like, yeah, if you're just going to print 1,000 yard signs, I'm not going to be your best price. And to be fair, I don't really want to be, like, that's
Right.
not, but if you need something really complex or you need crazy turnaround times, stuff like that, we can generally help out with that.
Pretty sure it's the Fast Signs that the one I use in Tulsa. They could get me like high end, like good looking business cards in 24 to 48 hours. We would go in and like, okay, hey, we're gonna go over to this trade. Like somebody would pop up and, hey, I don't have the rest of the money to pay for I knew everybody in town. I knew all the other vendors and stuff in town, and somebody would be like, hey, would like half a booth at the Home and Garden Show?
All right.
It's tomorrow or it's the next day. Then we would go over there and go, I'm setting up a trade show booth. My budget is XYZ, like $1,000. What can you print for me?
Yeah.
We can do brochures or, business cards. For a while there, I'd have guys walking around these trade shows with big balloons. I've printed somewhere else because Fast Signs didn't put giant balloons.
Yeah. I've never done balloons. That's a different ballgame. Yeah.
So you got these sign businesses, you're looking at biz by sell and stuff. Have you ever, there's just so much on there. Have you ever taken a look and done a deep dive into something totally like, I don't know why I'm looking at this, but I think I might buy it. And then because I catch myself doing this is what I'm asking.
Yes. Yeah. Too much. In fact, that's probably been the biggest question I'm asking myself right now is, where do we want to go with this? Like, are we doing a hold co or are we doing a roll up? Is kind of what I've been asking myself. And I don't know that I have the answer right now. I think roll up because we're building a new ERP right now. We're really getting systemized. It seems silly to not do a roll up because I'll be able to optimize whatever we buy. At the same time, I think there's probably going to be a little bit, I'm not sure what it looks like to do a roll up within a franchise. What do my exit opportunities look like? Is there someone, because I could take this thing and let's say I take it in the next 5, 10 years, I'm at 70, 80, 100 million in revenue, right? Because of what I acquire. Is there someone out there that goes, yeah, I want to buy that? Or are they like, I want to buy it, but not as a franchise? So does it hurt my multiple? Am I better going in another direction, manufacturing or something similar and doing a roll up there? I don't have the answer right now. I'm kind of exploring that.
I think it definitely, and I don't know the answer either, but my gut tells me it would limit your pool of buyers. You get into those kind of numbers, and your pool of buyers are private equity, family
Mm,
offices, and strategic buyers, and some individuals. But usually it's going to be one of those investment
right.
banker, investment bank, private equity, investment bank backed private equity. Strategic purchases, one of your competitors wanting to buy it out. You build something big enough and you have it run efficiently enough, the corporate franchise might buy it back. It's not uncommon for these big franchises to actually
Sure.
have hybrid model where they have X number of franchises and X number of franchise owned. The problem is they're going to have some say, some control of who you sell it to,
Yeah.
and it might cut your multiple down because like they can just say if they want to buy it. It's when Amazon started to. I know some Amazon resellers. People sell their stuff on Amazon. If Amazon decides to enter into your market, they'll send you a letter basically. It says, "Hey, we're entering your market. We're willing to buy your company for XYZ, or we can compete with you." You don't want to be competing with the guy that cut
You
your
do
check.
not want to compete with Amazon. Yeah.
Like you don't
That
want to compete with the guy cutting your check. You're tied
right.
up. You're bound in a tough situation. So you could put yourself. I can see where that. If Fast
Yeah,
Signs
man.
got wind that you wanted to sell it, and then they wanted to acquire the whole thing. And you're like, yeah, I want to hire multiple. There, it could be very possible for them to go, yeah, well, we're not going to let you sell it to anybody
Yeah.
else.
Yeah. Well, and they've never done corporate owned stores. That's kind of one of their things. And I think it's like, hey, we don't compete with our franchisees. That's not what we do. And that's cool. Like I get that. So I don't yeah, I don't know. It'd have to be someone that the EBITDA number is high enough where they're like, we don't really care if it's in a franchise. If we can keep running it, it's a good investment.
Family offices probably would be that way. There's a lot of family offices that, especially if you get to get their attention, you kind of got to be above that $25 million mark. But if you get up there and you can make a significant impact to a family office, what they're looking for is deploying their wealth and getting a return on their investment.
Right.
And
Something
you
safe and
know,
something.
and they're looking at some other stuff like ERP, environmentally responsible products and companies and that type of stuff. Being a printing company, being owned by Fast Signs, they're probably got that pressure already, so they're probably making some of those shifts anyway. So
Yeah, we're currently working on that, doing some like carbon footprint studies and that sort of thing. It's expensive, but Amazon's asking for that. So move in that direction. And
there's
all
a
the big guys are going to ask for that.
yeah, it's just there's pressure. There's
Yeah.
pressure from investors, anybody, especially Amazon and companies like that are publicly listed. There's just pressure from the community in the market spaces that want it.
Yeah. Well, that's interesting. That's good insight of the family office. And like I said, I don't have to make the decision now because we're in the midst of merging with another company that'll significantly increase the revenue. So I got that on my plate, but looking 2 years down the road, 3 years down the road, kind of want to figure out where this thing's going.
So that's what I was going to ask. Like, what's the end goal? Just from looking at all this stuff. If you're looking at an exit or you're looking to do something else in 5 to 10 years, the time to start planning all that is now. Sounds like you've
We've
already
been
got you.
we've been discussing like, is that are we looking for an exit or are we looking for an annuity? Right? It's two different directions. The way we build the leadership team, it's going to be more of an investment now, not running quite as lean to build an annuity versus like cut costs, be as lean as possible.
So, let's talk a little bit about like you went holdco or roll up. Roll up, to me, they're both the same in the acquisition phase of it. What they're
Right.
different is in the way you hold them and the way you do your financials and the way you prep it for exit, right? So a holding company, you can still acquire two fast signs in every state, in every major city, and still be considered a holding co, not a roll up.
I think probably the differentiation I'm making is that a hold co for me is I'm looking in other industries versus a roll up. I'm strictly focusing on the signage
Yeah.
space. I think that's probably more. So it's probably a little more nuanced. It's are we going to stay in our industry or are we going to diversify? And then are we going to be holder? Are we going to hold co or are we going to look for an exit in 5 years? Right.
I like the holdco mentality of who are my suppliers? Like, who do I sell to? and who do I buy
Mhm.
from? And
Yeah.
then basically start owning the food chain.
So you're suggesting I buy Amazon? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, maybe.
Easy, yeah,
Yeah,
one stop
yeah.
at a time. That's actually interesting you say that though, because I had reached out to a supplier kind of with that intention, like I could buy my supplier and then I'm vertically integrated. We didn't get real far. I was a little nervous about it, to be honest, because it's a different model. And then the people they're supplying are my competitors, and what does that look like? So,
Yeah, it's all blue ocean. You should be fine. The whole trick with that is you just gotta manage it as if you're the chairman of the board, right? And like manage your own conflicts of interest and stuff
right,
so that it stands on its own, it runs on its own. It gives you a fair deal because you own it, but it also doesn't hurt those other guys. You don't get anti-competitive against the other competitors by jacking up the prices for them or anything.
right,
Otherwise,
right.
you're hurting an asset you bought, and they're going to find somebody else, right?
Yeah.
The other one is I advise a few people who are thinking about growing through acquisition and like, or they're like, hey, how do I get to? I have XYZ franchise I'm trying to open up at 100 miles away in this other big city near me. How do I get there? And I was like, where do you get the most of your referrals from? Like,
Hmm.
who refers the most business to you? And in this case, he does air duct cleaning and fixes like dryers and stuff. And it was like
Hmm.
the appliance repair guys. Like, cool.
Okay.
Don't buy an air duct cleaning company 100 miles away in this big other city. Why don't you look around and see if anybody's selling their appliance repair shop? Because then
Interesting.
you have a facility, right? All he needs for the air duct cleaning business is a truck and the brushes and the tools that
Right,
go in the tool truck.
right,
The appliance repair companies already have tool trucks, so you just need a different magnet for your damn door. And
right,
you put two trucks down there and you're open operation and you have a source of leads because half the time these dryer repair guys go out there and the whole reason the dryer doesn't work is because the duct's all jammed up and they're not suited to clean that raw or reinstall that
right.
properly. So the other thing I would say to you is who gives you most of your referrals? Where does your business come from? Like on a given basis, like who's sending you the most? A lot of times that's the guy you want to consider.
Buy. We've thought about that. Like, yeah, the crazy thing for us is when you get into the signage industry, like you don't think about it till you get in it. And then you drive down the street and you're like, oh my word, there's a $5,000 sign. There's a $5,000 sign. Like literally, there's $100,000 worth of work within 200 feet of me. It's just insane. I'm sometimes amazed that municipalities let us put up as many signs as they do because it's kind of ridiculous. We've thought about, do you buy an entity that has a lot of signage needs, and right, then that entity is your customer, and you're just guaranteeing yourself all that work because they're going to
Right.
buy it from somewhere. Might as well buy it from me.
I'm trying to think of who would be commercial construction or
Mhm.
even like the guys that go out and finish, like you build a commercial building, think about it, the guys that go out and finish out the hospitals and stuff. There's signs everywhere in a lot of commercial buildings. The
Yeah,
placards on the doors, the exit thing, directions to
yeah.
exit, direction placards, and then
We
the
do all
sign.
that.
Yeah, no.
All the braille and the ADA. We actually print our own. We make tons of braille, and we do the takeoffs for the contractors. We do the bid work. Industrial developers, like we're working on one industrial site. It's an obscene amount of signage. Like it's a 2,000 acre site. Like the amount of signage that will be there is just crazy. So I look at that now. I mean, that's a big fish, but still, who's making the recommendations on that stuff? Is it the civil engineers? Who's down the food chain saying, hey, developer, you should get these signs and you should get them here, right?
Yeah, you may not need to buy the construction company if they're all licensing out to the same architect and civil engineer.
Right.
You might buy a
That's good.
three-person civil engineering company, let them run their thing. You just kind of own it and say, hey, whenever you need signs, come over here. We'll
Put
private
us in
label
the
this.
plans. That I mean, all the architects in the architectural drawings say, here's where you should get these signs from. Just
Yeah.
put us in there.
So a lot of that's what I was saying. Just look, what's your source of food? Like who are your suppliers,
Hmm.
and then who refers the most business to you? Like where's your
Right.
business coming from? That's the first places you always want to look. And
Yeah.
then there's also like other logic stuff. Like are there shops in town or other stuff in town where selling signage or something around that selling signage makes sense? Roll up versus holdco,
Yeah.
exit versus hold. So what's the similarities between them? That's the one thing you want to say. Like, if I didn't want to make the decision today and I wanted to run a good company, what would apply to both of them and start there? Like
Yeah,
systems
I
and
mean, I think
processes, right?
lean systems, the right leadership team in place. Like, I think your multiples go up if the investor says, I don't have to do anything day to day in this business. I buy it and it runs itself. So, I mean, that's what we're focused on right now, even with me moving to the visionary role and my partner taking over the integrator role. We're trying to get to the place where If I'm gone 2 weeks, it doesn't matter. Like the place just hums along. And we're very much getting there. Like versus a year ago, I was very involved in the day to day, and it's changed drastically. So I think we are executing on all the right things. It's probably just for me more of a question that relates to what's next in terms of acquisitions. Do we stop? Because after this merger, we'll be in the 30 million range in annual revenue. So do we then continue and, like I said, trying to get to 60, 70, 80, or do we say let's just refine this thing and get it really dialed in and then do an ESOP or sell or whatever? I don't think we know. 45, I'm not ready to retire by any means. I think it's a question me and my partners have to answer, but you chose to exit, correct?
I chose to exit for many reasons. So I had a real estate investment group, and we were specialized in doing stopping foreclosure, and the market got so hot it ate up our like there was just no available inventory for our strategy.
Okay.
And I could have switched and shifted, but I was kind of burnt out on it. Wasn't
Yeah.
seeing eye to eye with the partner at this point. We've been working together from like in one company or another. We've been working together since like 2007, 2008. It was 2017, around 2017. So he wanted to continue doing. He thought he could ride it out. I wanted to leave. I basically we owned a bunch of real estate. We just split up the real estate to where it made more sense. I had an exit. I went on to do some other stuff. I had taken control of ownership of the local real estate investment association, and realized that with two other partners, realized that everybody wanted to be the chief and nobody wanted to be the cook on that. So I quickly divested myself of that to the other two guys, and that's changed hands like 3 or 4 times since then.
Oh
And
wow.
it's a lot of work to run a big real estate investment association with very little income. The reason I got rid of it is like I'd already moved to Dallas because I move around a little bit now, I like this digital nomad lifestyle. And so we were down in Dallas. We were running the club in Tulsa, and it just wasn't making. At its best, it would do 2 to 300,000 a year, and there were three of us
Okay.
that owned it.
Oh
It
yeah.
had no path to make
You
it
can't live off
interesting.
that.
It was fun, but good people, but just had no path. I just gave my shares over to one of the other partners who wanted it himself. Both me and there were three of us. The two of the partners gave our shares to the partner that wanted it, and then as soon as he had it all on his own, he realized he didn't want to do it all on his own anymore. And now I think he's a minority owner in it, and he's got
Okay.
somebody else running it.
Okay.
But I jumped into acquisition and mergers because I wanted to do something a bigger game,
Okay.
and I bought a pest control company. I still own it. I bought it way too small and made a big mistake. And so it's just myself and a couple techs, and I'll never probably get rid of it unless they want to because it's my nepotism company. Everybody that works there is a related to me.
Everybody needs one of those. Just
And
throw
as
it
we
on.
grow it, it'll print money, man. The pest control has really good margins. So
Yeah.
as we acquire other ones in that market, I don't think I'll do it anywhere else either.
You had mentioned, did you do a marketing rollout
We
before?
did. I partnered with some guys when I first got. So I told you I didn't know what I was up to. So I went and hired some mentors to teach us. And I say mentors because I did a couple of different programs that are out there. And the first one I did, I came out of, I'll just say it, it was Jeremy Harbour out of Europe. I would say great program. The network and the people are awesome. I meet people from all over the world through it because he's in Dubai one weekend, and then one week he has a yacht, and basically he teaches from his yacht. He's bought and sold a bunch of different companies, taken some public and stuff. The information is by like water hose method, where like you sign up for the course and he sends you like 40 or 50 videos. They're like, okay, you probably ought to know how to run a business really well before I teach you what I'm going to teach you. So here's 50 videos to teach you that. And then you spend 3 days with him. We talk about just deal sourcing and how to fund the deal and how to negotiate it and his way of doing things. And then you have this whole community around doing
Right.
that. So out of that community, we were meeting every week to try to figure out what we wanted to do with the knowledge we have now.
Right.
And one of us popped off like, we should do a roll up. And another's like, okay, marketing companies. Well, I have a marketing MBA. So we did like, who wants to raise your hand and run this thing?
Yeah.
About
Right.
8 of us raised our hand, and I learned a heck of a lesson from it. It didn't go bad. We actually had I still got the stack of stuff over here somewhere. I talked to over 200 plus marketing agencies in less than 200 days. We spurred enough interest with the way we were doing this roll up. We were taking minority stake, doing a true roll up where they were getting a higher multiple because of the larger company we were creating. And it
Hmm.
was unique enough. And we brought in some really top guns in the industry, people that had done top 10 marketing agencies not once or twice in their careers. I think the biggest thing I learned is that marketing agencies, the things I was shocked about was that marketing agencies still have a hard time getting leads for themselves. We were in
Interesting.
the middle of COVID, and most of them are used to trade shows, bumping elbows, and knowing people, taking somebody out to dinner, doing the wine and dine, and getting a client.
Right.
And now that was locked down and done, they were having a rough time finding
Struggling.
how to source leads. The lead generation companies were killing it. I met a few guys that own lead generation companies that are less than 2 or 3 years old, running on 3, 4 people, and they were generating 7, 8. One of the guys was doing 9 million in 3 years. He's selling over $1 million of leads a year to insurance companies. He
Wow.
he built out 5 or 6 websites and some local hot spots on different Google Maps or whatever listings or whatever, and was generating. He was selling 1,000+ calls a week or 1,000+ calls a day or something to insurance providers. Was killing it. And one of the big ones too is selling them to farmers. He did this in just a few years. We talked to some really interesting guys, and that project's probably still going on. What I'll be straight up, what happened is 2 of the partners realized that we had 8 CEOs in the room, and everybody wanted to be the visionary. Nobody wanted to be the integrator, and we were having a
Yeah.
hard time getting stuff done, which drives
Yeah.
me nuts because I'm one of these guys, big visionary. We need to do X, Y, and Z. Who's up for it? When somebody says, "Okay, I'll take care of that," I'm a guy like buy win, right? You'll do
Yeah.
you volunteered for this. I want to put it in a project. I want to see by win, and I don't want to hear about it until it's that day because coming up with my next vision, to get any of them to commit to a date, a date and time, was just a nightmare.
No,
So when 2 of the partners said, "Hey, this isn't working the way we thought it was," we were mad at first, but we're going to buy you guys out and we're going to do it on our own. After being mad for a few days, I decided it was a good idea. Let's let them have it.
it makes
So,
sense.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I learned some very valuable lessons. Number one, I just finished before I did into merge. I did a gap in between. This was 2017, and I was you're talking about COVID. As I took a couple years off and went down to Dallas and did this thing where it was team development and leadership. We're building highly effective teams, and
Hmm.
everything we did in that marketing roll up was against everything they taught us against building highly like.
Like literally, you were teaching it, and then you're like, "Yeah, I'm
Uh,
not going to do that."
I was
Yeah.
you volunteer for the first year, and the second year you teach the first year students. So it's a 2-year program type of thing. Everything that we did in this program, I was going against in this company we had just created, and it was that was bugging me too. It's okay,
Yeah.
it's either am I not working this or is it not working? And then it just clicks in your head I've got 8 people who are used to being SVPs or CEOs or better. No, we don't have any integrators here, and I'm still looking for a decent integrator. I think I've done the research, and I've interviewed 100+ people over the years, over the last couple of years. Inside of the podcast, I've done I'll have 100 by the end of the year here, and then just random people that I interview about owning business. I'm the guy that'll sit down beside a coffee shop, right? I sat down at a coffee shop here not too long ago, and the guy was sitting. It was really busy. I said, "Can I sit here?" There's 4 chairs, and he was wearing a uniform. I was like, "What do you do?" And they're like, "Oh, I own a so and so business." Pretty soon he's like, "You're asking me a lot of questions about my business." I was like, "I kind of own a thing about that. And that's just what I do. If it bugs you at any time, stop." But I dig into business models. And what I've realized is there's so many similarities, right? He was having a hard time figuring out how to do leads, right?
Mhm.
He had a hard time finding great employees. So it's the top 3 in those market agencies were getting good qualified leads.
Right.
He's a good sales guy. He could close them when you know who to talk to, but knowing who to
Right.
talk to and
Yeah.
start getting conversations started, what I call a lead. Finding great employees. So,
Yeah.
and then the
And
third one
developing
is
systems like I
the third one's a systems and process, right?
yeah, I mean, that's where we're at. And some of these guys on Twitter, I mean, John Matzner is one of them. He's a big systems guy. And of course, Josh Schultz, I think it is with
Yeah.
Gamecast. I look at these guys and I'm like, wow. I mean, it's not me, right? I wish I was like those guys. But I also, man, there's so much power in automation. There's so much power in systems. If we can, I see it. Like I believe in it. Probably I'm not the guy to build it, but I see it. And that's something we're actually doing here. We just started a quality assurance role as a director level. So it would report directly to the integrator. Because, we've been given a lot of lip service to SOPs and processes and systems, but we didn't actually give someone authority. And so we're like, okay, so we're not really being honest. We say yeah, we think this should happen, but no one has the authority. That's all they do. So we're pretty excited about that seat, and we've identified someone we think could fill it. I'm hoping because that's kind of like you mentioned, not being able to find a good integrator. if there's such a lack of integrators out there, maybe it's like it's the systems and the automation is what we need to really dig into, right?
Well, you know, the
Because we
interesting
have amazing systems and automation. Not that you don't need an integrator, but maybe they don't have to be so high on that scale of integrator.
what I was going to say until I got ADD'd off and lost my train of thought was I have interviewed over 100 plus business owners. I talk to business owners all the time. And what I've always figured out, if they're doing more than seven figures, they're doing seven figures plus, they have an integrator. And I can
Mm,
identify them pretty quickly. So in my real estate things, and I don't say this very often because I don't want to coach anybody anymore, but I had three, maybe four different times where I was coaching NFL players to how to buy and sell real estate, retired
mhm.
NFL guys. And I won't say who they are because I respect their privacy and stuff. But one of them was asking about it, and we never got to the point where I was consulting him on real estate. That's why we were having conversations. And he had a sales organization who sold solar panels and solar stuff. And it was a solar. No, they did solar, I believe, and they did the electrical, like where they sold you different electric company because in Texas
Oh,
it,
right. Where it's
it's
the provider. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, you can change providers and stuff. They would
Right.
change your provider, and I think they used to or did sell solar too. But he had quite a few, more than 100 sales reps. And he was talking about, like, I talked about his business model because that's what I love to learn. And he's talking about so anyway, we were talking about his business and how it grew. And it's like, okay, he brought on his office manager and she started he realized how organized she was. He started giving him more and more. The next thing you know, he was single at the time. His office manager became his wife. And now he is a like chief operation officer. And he went
Yeah.
from talking, and I just identified it right off the bat, just from what he comes with the ideas, she implements them and makes them run smoothly, and won't let him implement the next idea until this one's running smoothly. And I'm like,
Yeah. You got an integrator. Yeah.
yeah, you got an integrator. He didn't
Yeah.
even know what that was at the time, and he didn't need to. But I've been
Yeah.
able to identify that if you're above six or seven figure, I'd say if you're above seven figures at least,
Okay.
within a few minutes of me talking about your business structure and who does what in the day-to-day operations, I'll know whether or not you're just naturally an integrator or you're a visionary. And the first thing I'll say is, who runs your day-to-day operations?
Yeah.
Who makes sense? Once you figure out it should be done, step one, two, three, who makes sure that it's done, step one, two, and three, because it's not you.
Yeah.
That's not a visionary trait. I hate
No,
repetitive tasks.
I don't mind working. I actually
Yeah.
love the physical aspect of what we do. Sometimes I just go out and work on the floor.
Yeah.
I think it's good culture building, but I enjoy it. But yeah, I couldn't do it all day long. In the sense of I'm daydreaming too much. I'm thinking about what the next thing is and how we're gonna get there. I cause too much chaos, to be honest. Like they're like, great, thanks. But in a perfect image, the first store I owned, they
Hmm.
had a little thing on the wall that says days since Wes rearranged the shop, because I'd just be like, this is a mess, and I'd rearrange everything. And it was like one of those work lost days signs. And it was never more than like 15. Like that had to be the max it got to, was 15.
Being the owner of a sign shop could be fun because you could always make fun signs like for like things like that, right? You could just
Yeah.
walk in.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Or people make fun signs and stick them on your wall when you didn't know about it. Which there's the reason I'm sitting here with the white wall behind me is because the one that's on my other wall,
What does
that
it say?
it's a quote, but it's got a nice photo of me on it, and I didn't really want it. It's a quote. I think it's from The Office. Would I
Okay.
rather be feared or loved? Easy both. I want people to be afraid of how much they love me. So yeah, but they did it in like a high tack vinyl, so if I take it off, it rips the paint off the wall. So I don't know if it's respect or not, but it's there, so it's
Uh,
fine. We
I
have a
think
good time.
I'd be in trouble if I worked for a sign company because I would always be messing with somebody, right? And I have a sense of humor that's either loved or hated. There's just no in between.
It's black
Uh,
or white. There's not any other options.
Somebody said that my 15-year anniversary was last week, or about a
Oh,
week,
congratulations.
about 2 weeks now, around Halloween. Somebody says, like, how do you stay married for 15 plus years? I was like, we've been together for 19. I
Yeah.
said, she just has an incredible sense of humor because most people couldn't put up with me, right? Like I say things and do things that I probably shouldn't say, and she just knows it's just my awkward, quirky sense of humor, and just nods her head and shakes her head at me, and like it's like
She's got to love
I,
it or else she'd hate it. I have a friend like that.
yeah,
He equally offends everybody. I'm like, you can't say that. He's like, yeah, but I say it to everybody, so it's okay.
yeah.
Okay, I'm not going to say that.
Got to be careful what you say on these shows. You don't want to be canceled before you even make it. So let's talk. We've been here for almost an hour now.
Hmm.
How do people get a hold of you if they want to learn about the sign business, or what
I
can
mean,
we
feel
as
free
an
to reach
audience do for you?
Well, feel free to reach out to me on Twitter. My DMs are open. I answer them pretty quickly. Someone actually sent me a sign company for sale last week, so I looked at the sim this week, signed the NDA. It was interesting.
Hmm.
I don't know what we'll do, but I'm always looking for acquisitions. I'm looking for any way I can help, honestly. Like we're we're still growing like crazy. We're focused primarily on national accounts. So if you know somebody that works at a company that's got hundreds of locations across the US that needs rollouts of big sign packages. We do site-wide work for Amazon where we'll ship to 100, 200 sites over the course of a week, Walmart, stuff like that. In terms of the business side, I'll take any referrals you can send me. I also just kind of want to help. Like I'm the type of person that is like, if I can give you advice, and I love business. I love the opportunities. I had some guys reach out to me about a possible investment, and I'm not doing it right now, but I'm super excited about what they're doing. Like if I can assist them in any way, like absolutely, I want to. I think that's what I love about, and maybe it's just I'm just finding it, but there's a small business community that you're aware of that's actively helping one another, actively like encouraging one another and cheering each other on, and like they're just passionate about doing cool stuff and speaking that same language. And I'm excited to be part of it, honestly.
Cool.
Uh, like you said earlier, it's a blue ocean. There's so much opportunity. It's like, how can we help one another?
Yeah. I told you I did Jeremy Harbor's. I've also done Roland Frazier's. I've talked to all the other Carl Allen. I've talked to all the other guys. I haven't done their courses yet, but I probably will. I'm a course
Mhm.
junkie. I'll take them when I'm doing something that I kind of know what each one of their strong points is. If I have an acquisition or something lining up, you kind of like, hey, I probably should use this strategy. I'll go run through one of their courses, and they're usually under 10 grand, so it's not like they're expensive.
And you can, it's going to school, right? It's continuing
Yeah.
education. It's good
Roland
for you.
Frazier's was interesting. It's free to do his first little week thing, and then you sign up, and it's under 10 grand. It's like 5 or 6 thousand. But man, there was like two. I still haven't made it through all the videos, and that was 8 months ago. There's 200 plus videos in his Kajabi
Wow.
library, and so when
That's
I
amazing.
need something, a lot of times I just look through the videos there. And I was stumbling across the other day, and there's like how to run a better podcast. I'm like, I probably should watch that. So yeah,
I can learn something from that.
yeah.
Yeah.
But I'm an eternal learner. I've got more college degrees than the average fool should have, and so
That's
thought I
awesome.
was going to teach college, but I'll just leave that at that. But I just like to learn. I like to learn. That's why I'm generally intrigued by other people, their business model, how it's working. And
Hmm.
then I used to, one might work for you. I don't know if they have it where you're at, but you can look around. It's called 1 Million Cups. And I wish they would do something in the acquisition entrepreneur phase that this is, because that's a startup type of thing. But it's ran by the Kaiser Foundation, or is funded by started by the Kaiser Foundation. But what it is, either 1 week, 1 or 2 weeks out of the month, they get together at some type of co-working space, and then
Okay.
they have 1 to 2 startups get up, and the rules are you have to be in business for a year, you have to have some traction, and there's some rules around what a startup is. They get up and they do a 15 or 20 minute pitch, and then everybody asks them really tough questions for 5 or 10 minutes to help them move their game forward. So it's in the spirit of, okay, what's your path to profitability, or like just like really getting their gears to turn. And I
Right.
absolutely, even when I own the real estate investment group, I absolutely love going to this. And people would ask me, well, you own a real estate investment group, why are you going to a startup hangout every
Right.
Wednesday? Because a while when they started, it was every Wednesday. And I said, because two things. Number one, I was doing foreclosures, so I was doom and gloom all the time. Every client I had was losing their house, crying, they were
Yeah.
upset. It was a very dark kind of industry. It's one of the reasons I didn't want to be in it anymore. The second is so when I got to see these entrepreneurs, they're fired up,
Right.
and you'd be asking them a tough question like, "Hey, what's your roadmap to profitability, or what have you thought about X, Y, and Z?" And then as soon as you get done asking, you're like, "I should probably take a look at that with my company." Right?
Yeah. What's my roadmap to profitability?
Have you tried cross selling and upselling or whatever it is you're talking about? And you
Right.
realize that you're giving yourself advice because you know you needed to do it, you just haven't said it out loud. And
Yeah.
you could go back to the office and implement what other people ask or what you ask. So it was just it was my Wednesday inspiration, right? Because
Yeah.
if everything you do is like I said, everybody that came in, we were doing 5, 6 hours, 6 houses a week, some weeks where we were buying them,
That's
and
incredible.
we were stopping foreclosures. But everybody that talked to us had a horrible story how either they lost their job, got sick, got some type of life-threatening illness,
Right.
something happened in their life, and or the bank's just moving them, bending them over, like the banks are doing them wrong.
Yeah.
And for the longest time, the banks knew my name; they hated my guts. Like we filed so many complaints with the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, assisted our clients doing it. that at some point, some of the bigger banks, and I won't say their name on here, but would actually, if my name was signed, don't care if I changed the LLC or whatever, if it was my signature, if it said Ronald Paul Skelton Jr. on it, they would send us a letter saying offer rejected, buyers not qualified. And I'd literally we'd have accounts with cash sitting in there. So we
Yeah.
turned them in for that, right? For blacklisting
Really?
investors. So we got, if you remember some of the CNN stories that these big banks got in trouble for blacklisting investors, I started turning the wheel on that. I didn't say, I called everybody I knew doing what I was doing and kind of was the instigator to, hey,
We're gonna turn these guys in.
we
Yeah.
should all turn them in for listing us. Are you on the list? Are you on the list? And then sure enough, a bunch of us filed a complaint within a week and they got popped. So
Well, it's interesting you talk about like learning. So you had said who's your supplier or who's your referral partner, and but then we got to talking about marketing agencies, and funnily enough, marketing agencies have a huge say in the signage in a lot of
yeah.
organizations because sometimes they outsource it and mark it up and do it
Mhm.
themselves or whatever. So we've actually thought about, my one partner I think would do a great job running a marketing firm. It's kind of his passion, and so we've looked. That was an acquisition we thought about. We haven't dove deep into it at this point because like we're still doing a lot of stuff and merger and all that, but that's one like vertical that we thought of getting into. I'm
Yeah,
not a marketer, so it kind of terrifies me. I'm like, I don't know, I don't know anything about that, but
if you thought about it, like who in town's designing all the logos for these guys? Like any new startup, or so you're looking, if you're going for national accounts, that's a different thing. But if you're
yeah,
looking for like a local, if you're just really looking to expand in your local space, who's the go-to guy for logo design, sign
right,
branding, further branding?
right.
Because whoever's making that branding call, it's like, okay, you're going to need new signage, right? They're the ones that are going to say you got to
Yeah.
have new
Go
letterhead, new
here. This is
signage.
who we
Yeah.
work with. Yeah, you're right though. For the national account space, which is really our focus, that's a tough one because you're talking about big marketing agencies at that point. They're already huge guys.
And it's interesting is there's so many different flavors of marketing agencies. There's things that do like what's called geofencing, and all they do is like target your local area, and all they do is run ads for you. There's ad placement companies, there's branding, there's design, logo design, and creatives. The people that there's agencies that I was just talking to a guy who has a multi-million-dollar agency in India, and
Oh, wow.
he's wanting to exit out of, and he's got big chocolate brands and other stuff, U.S. based companies that he does their packaging and design and stuff,
Wow.
design their packaging, labeling, and everything for products they move into India, right? So
Wow.
just as wide as you could think of the like marketing agencies are as far as what all they do, they're
Yeah.
huge. It's huge. I mean,
So much
there's so
opportunity.
many of them that probably would never send a lead to, like the guys doing AdSense ads or Google ads and Facebook ads and
Yes,
up
that's not.
pricing them a little. They're
Yeah.
not going to see any leads, but the guys just developing those brands and doing brand logo designs and
Yeah. Brand awareness and all that.
brand
Yeah.
awareness and stuff like that. Now those guys probably.
I was speaking of my director of finance, I was telling me about a really cool business out of Chicago. They do, if you watch a soccer game and there's the digital billboard ads. So he sets up those billboards for FIFA, for US soccer, all over the world. He's going to be at the World Cup, like all that stuff. But what's crazy about his technology is he actually developed, I mean, I'm sure he's patented it, where depending on the feed and the country you're watching it in, it'll show a different ad.
Yep.
And they use like the color of the LEDs and the frequency of the television cameras to determine which ad shows. And it's amazing. So he can sell like 3 and 4 ads on one screen for one broadcast. Brilliant. It's brilliant.
That's not something I haven't heard of. That's really cool.
Yeah, it's
So
really neat.
cool. So let's end with the story because we're after the hour now. What's the coolest
Sure.
thing you ever made? And all your sign companies and everything. What's the weirdest, coolest, or story worthy thing that you guys have
Oh,
made?
oh boy, put me on the spot. The coolest thing we've ever made. Trying to think. Man, so this honeycomb wall we're building right now is really awesome. I'll have to get some photos of that. It's almost too complex to explain. Honestly, they showed me and I was like, okay, wow, that's intense. That's pretty crazy.
I have a
Actually,
go ahead. I was say I
sorry.
have a friend who owns a marketing agency in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and his sign is on green wall. It's live. Like, and they put some
Oh,
type of
that's
mesh on
cool.
the wall, and it's actually got some type of
Yeah,
there are plants growing in it, but his sign is on this living green
that's pretty cool.
scape,
And
and
he projects on it or what?
there's acrylic letters or something that go like
Okay.
that stick out, and
Yeah,
the plants can grow behind and stuff. But
that's cool.
yeah,
Yeah.
so,
We did a cool electrical sign for an Amazon site that had like a green wall. Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm coming up with blanks. Like there's so much cool stuff we do. Actually, the favorite thing we just did is, and maybe I'll get you some pictures. My designers, I challenged them to make this really their room. I said, look, this needs to be a showroom. They did this really cool, like under the sea sort of theme, but a little bit cartoonish, like kind of fun. Everything's awesome. And then something that's really happening now in our signage space is this PET foam. It's a sound absorbing foam. I can see the panels. It's like in office spaces and all that. Well, we can print directly on that. So they took pieces of that foam and they printed like waves, and then we have CNC routers, so we cut them in the shape of a wave. So from the ceiling, it's like waves are crashing down from the ceiling in this PET foam. It looks really, really cool. They
That
did a
sounds
fantastic
cool.
job. Yeah, they're not quite done. They have a divider that's going in the room, and there's going to be a big yellow submarine on it, and that.
Cool. You have that sound. You have that sound foam and stuff. When I set up a new studio, right now you can see I got the stairs in the background. I'm in my tiny home in the middle of the redwood forest. But at some point, I'll
Yeah,
probably pop up another studio.
yeah,
And when I do that, I might reach out to you and say, hey,
yeah,
let's do something cool to go behind me. I usually,
absolutely.
if you see my early shows, I always just put weird art behind me. Like there was a long time, for a long time, there was this monkey or this gorilla that had a headset on. It looked like he was talking
Yeah,
on a, so he'd
that's
sit there
awesome.
behind me the whole time on with the headset, like he's listening to the show. But
Yeah, we could do something like use that foam, but you can cut it in all kinds of dimensions, so it actually
mhm.
comes off the wall, and you could do some really cool stuff with it.
I have to do something cool.
Yeah,
Probably by midtime next year. I'll determine. Right now, we're looking for land that's ours, so we build a house. We're going to stay here for a while, so we'll probably
let's say
build
that.
another
Okay.
house. Yeah, it's
Oh, that's cool.
expensive, but I
Oh,
appreciate having you on here today. Is there
hey,
any
thank you.
one last thing? If somebody could remember like one or two things from the show today, what would you want them to remember of you?
So what do they want to remember of me? I think one, like, how can I help? Reach out to me. I want to be a resource for the community, I think is the biggest thing. And if you know of an awesome sign company for sale somewhere in the south of the country, southwest, Texas area, southeast, maybe in California, I'm definitely
Mhm.
interested. I think we're going to keep going that way. But yeah, how can I help? I think that's the biggest thing. I want to be a resource for the community. I love to just talk to people about the cool things they're doing and seeing if I can give any ideas.
And you're definitely a good role model for acquisition entrepreneurship works, right?
That's
Went
right.
from camera repair shop to print shop to now on the track to be a 30 plus $1 million. Not what you said earlier. You guys will be potentially 30
That's the
plus million
goal.
dollars
Yeah.
in the
Hopefully
next
by the
year or
end of
so.
next year. So yeah.
Awesome. That's it.
Yeah.
And it's all through acquisitions and mergers and
I
growing. Yeah.
I really believe acquisitions like I one of my goals I believe in entrepreneurship. I
Hmm.
believe in it creating wealth for people. And I've got a number of amazing employees that I'm like, hey man, let's get you a business. Let's figure something out. I'll help you. Like I think we're moving away from this like greed is good mentality. And if we have this idea that we just want to help each other and help each other succeed, like I'm gonna succeed too, right? If that's the way we're focused.
It's funny you made that creed is good comment. When I decided to go from real estate to acquisitions and mergers, a buddy of mine when I was in the military, him and I used to watch that show all the time. I texted him. I texted him. He didn't respond to him, and his wife asked me, "It's like, hey, did you try to reach out to Kyle?" And I was like, "Yeah, just give me a message." I said, "Blue anaconda or blue whatever loves something still." I forgot what it was even said. It was a direct quote from that show, and he reached out like, "What the hell are you talking about?" It's like I'm moving into acquisition and mergers. He goes, "Oh no, you're going to be the evil." No, I'm not. I'm gonna do this right. Blue horseshoe loves anaconda still was from Jordan.
Jordan
What was it?
Belfort,
No,
is
no,
that
no. That was a different thing. What was the show? Wall Street, right? Wasn't Wall Street the acquisitions and merger shows from the late
oh,
90s?
yeah. I think I watched that one, but
Oh, okay. Well, what
yeah.
would you agreed as good as a quote directly from
Oh,
the
okay.
yeah, you
It's
know,
just something I heard. Yeah. So
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
I think the world's changing. I think ETA is a massive opportunity for so many people, and I'm excited about it. I want to help people do it,
Awesome.
regardless of what that means for me.
Well, I appreciate having you here today, man, and we'll call that a show.
Great. Thanks, Ron. It's nice meeting
Hold on.
you.
All right, hold on for just a second. Hey, it's your host, Ronald Skelton. I want to thank you personally for watching the show today and invite you to call our new hotline, 918 641 4150. That's 918 641 4150. Call us and tell us about our show, ask questions, suggest a guest, or even tell me about a business you have for sale, and we'll reach back out to you. Again, that number is 918 641 4150. Call our hotline, leave us some information. Thank you. I want to announce our new channel partners, the ITX Marketplace. Since 1998, ITX has created $5 billion in value by selling more than 225 IT businesses in 20 countries. ITX works exclusively with IT-enabled businesses generating between 5 million and 30 million who are ready to be sold, and M&A decision makers who are ready to buy. For over 25 years, ITX has developed industry knowledge that helps determine whether a seller is a good fit for their buyers before making the match. ITX Mergers and Acquisition Marketplace we have partnered with has a proprietary database of 50,000 plus global buyers seeking IT service firms, managed service providers, Microsoft service providers, software as a service platforms, and channel partners with Microsoft, Oracle, ServiceNow, and the Salesforce space. If you have an IT-enabled business you're ready to sell, I want you to visit the itexchangenet.com/marketplace. How to exit. That link will be in the show notes. Visit them now.